Thank you very much indeed for everyone for turning up. We've got the YouTube link now, which is exciting. Just running through the agenda straight away. 21.24, apologies for absence. We've got apologies for Councillor Jones. Are we happy to accept those apologies?
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you very much indeed. Declarations of interest, a chance to declare lots of different interests. I'm declaring a disclosable pecuniary interest in moving into Peters Road, which affects the planning matter later on, and I'll be leaving the chamber for that. Does anyone else have any other interest? Councillor Davis?
Share an interest in item 21330301 as a resident of Clifton Drive with the planning applications going and so forth.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Rockall?
And I declare a non-pecuniary interest in the item dealing with the planning application for the 53 dwellings around the cemetery.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So again, as a resident, that's fantastic. Anything else from anyone else? No, thank you very much indeed. So 21.26, the minutes of the previous meeting. A request to approve and sign these as an accurate record. You were all near enough there. Anything appearing that is of interest or concern for anyone?
Proposing.
Baz happy to propose. David seconding. Everyone happy to accept those? I think I will sign.
I don't think I saw the council right or vote.
Are you happy to me sign these, Rupert?
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Andy. That's all right. I was rushing on, so. I don't expect. No need to statements. Would you want to state the last one?
Yes, take the last page, please.
Thank you very much. 21.27, public participation from interested parties or members of the public. Do we have any requests? Consideration of requests from interested parties? No, nothing there. 21.29, Northants Council's report. We don't have that, but there's an item later on the agenda where I'll discuss a discussion I've had with our Northants councillors that seem to be positive, so that's probably covered there.
Now, just answer that point, I know you can talk, is there going to be a representative from Northants Council come to our meetings on a regular basis?
One of the things I can raise later. I think they're quite happy, but probably more demand later. So in other words, if we've
got something to right.
absolutely. And there's the question, do they come in person or can we do it hybrid? I suppose is another question. So appearing through Teams or something like that. But we can see that. And they're very happy to turn up at a meeting on a regular basis. 21.3, Town Matters, to receive an update on Flappy Field. Emma, do you want to do that or shall I,
Well, it's
you know, the technical stuff?
the obviously what we had before was the document that Tony Hoyle sent to me. Everybody's had a read of that. That was sort of their progress report. And then obviously today we found out that we have our application to extend the asset for community value bid has been accepted. So we have that until 2026.
So for 2026, Flappy Field is nominated as an asset of community value, which is great news. It, as we said earlier, it sort of takes us back to where we were beforehand, but it's good progress. And hopefully positive things will come from it. Does anyone want to say anything else on Flappy?
Having read it, I felt it was a lot more sensitive to our needs than previous.
It felt very positive, didn't it?
Much more positive,
Empathetic.
much more understanding of the situation.
Yes, because if you were sitting through the meeting when we had that, remember that time we had the inspector coming? With all the barristers and everything else about Fleetwood Field. I don't think people weren't here for that, but if I came in, were you there for that? No.
Yeah.
Well, it was very interesting, because I think Val will appreciate what we're saying, because we didn't get that impression on that big thing when the inspector was checking.
Well, it was an inquiry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was,
It certainly reads very
It's
positive.
very cold.
Presumably that letter's in the public domain or will be soon. Can we put it on our website?
Yeah, if I could put that on my
That'd
team.
be great.
I agree with Councillor Chester. I think there's a level of pragmatism that might be starting to emerge because it's a very politically sensitive piece of land anyway. And you can't get to, is it really worth it? Is there something we could do
I think partnership's a good word.
with obviously with stakeholders? I think it's different.
Good news, hopefully good news anyhow. 2130.02 to receive an update on the one-way system in St Ossides Lane. And this was generally saying that there are possibilities. I think if I recall correctly. It's something I sent that email around yesterday about the transport group, and it's something that I think sits more comfortably with them moving forward. But are there any strong views about what Sarah Barnwell says in the report?
I would be very much very good returns if we have before. I think there's a rat run now, in South Road, I think, and there's a lot of cars that park down there. It's not a satisfactory solution. It's a solution that didn't emergency, which I agree with. But now we're coming out of that emergency, we need to have two-way traffic because we do have people who drive cars in Amble. We have to recognise that. It's not just a pedestrian area. And therefore we have to make it safe for both the cars and the people. And moving everything down South Road, there's some big stuff that goes down there, but it does anyway. I just don't think it's not a good solution.
So your point is that it makes South Road into a one-way street?
And I think we shouldn't have that.
Yes. Val?
I totally agree, 100% agree. I use that a lot because of where I live in Handel, and it would cut that corner around Lough tremendously. And if you go, as I have on the X4 bus, top deck round Northampton, which has got a kind of circular one-way system, it would kill the marketplace stone dead.
Okay.
Because people wouldn't be able to park and just go and do a bit of shopping. And the thing we should be concentrating on is finding another car park.
Understood. That was touched on with the transport group as well. Paul, did you have anything?
No.
Jerry?
I'm not very strong views either way. I have to say, I do live down in the town. I do go up and down there quite regularly. I don't really recognise the issues that the councillors have suggested. I think what I'm more concerned about is that whatever we think we should be promoting reflects the views of the majority of the population, particularly ones who do use that part. So I use it regularly all the time. I have to come. Well, my normal route to this meeting would have been via the one-way system the other way, so I couldn't do that. It's really not a difficulty. All I did is I came up Wall Street instead. So, no big deal.
I think there are reviews for and against that.
But I think it's important if there's a consensus that it's better like that rather than worse, then that's what we should do.
Do we have a timescale for this? When's the present arrangement staying until?
It will stay, I would imagine. They haven't said this, but it would stay until all social distancing is removed, because that's why it's there, just for people queuing to go into the post office, chemist, so people can get by.
Just as the last, I don't even have the last problem. Thing is, it hasn't been like that under normal traffic conditions. It's only been like it whilst there's been much less traffic. I don't think you could make a judgment on how successful it's been in terms of the traffic. Yes, because more people can wander up that bit of road on the road rather than being on the pavement. And I think in terms of traffic movement, it would be wrong to make an assessment at this time.
It seems that the transport group talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and looking at recording information perhaps later on in the year towards Christmas time, October, November is probably an idea. And on that basis, we should see how it all fits together. So presumably that's okay for us at the moment. We don't need to make a decision or do anything on that.
Sorry. Did we get any noise from the residents about it? Did we get a lot of feedback?
We've not had anybody complain about it. We've just had one person who wanted this to be considered. So,
And again, we will consider it, but as part of a holistic view later
Mhm.
on. Secondly, 213003, to consider a request to run a kiosk selling sweets and ice creams in the town. I certainly read this and thought, what does it look like? That's what it would look
I
like.
mean, they haven't purchased it yet, but that's the sort of thing that they're considering. Yeah, passing it on.
Coming
I
out.
don't know what there is in existence.
Yeah, I literally just got it when I came in tonight.
So what are our views on kiosks selling sweets and ice creams in the marketplace-ish?
Yeah, well, I think they were first also asking for potential places, but the marketplace is the one place. We did go back to them and say that this wouldn't be a decision that we could make, because although we have the market rights for Thursday market and farmers market, we don't have the rights to allow people to pull up with a kiosk on any other day. It would be a highways matter.
One of the questions I had is it going to be an everyday thing or just an irregular thing, or?
On weekdays,
Yeah, I think they're
that's
thinking.
before on a Saturday.
It seems pretty regular all through the year. Any thoughts? Anyone say that?
Historically, we've always resisted. We've always been asked, people who wanted kebab stalls and things like that. We've always resisted that.
Okay. David?
I was going to say something different, but if historically we resisted it, then I'm happy to do it.
Historical precedent, what I've noticed as well is that, I'm not killjoy, believe me, but over the last couple of Saturdays and Sundays, the ice cream van has been turning up and parking in the bay near Tesco and doing a roaring train set on that. So I didn't know whether that was right or wrong. People asked me, and I said, I really didn't know the answer, to be honest.
So is anyone a big fan of sweet kiosks, or we're all generally not hugely for it?
That was sweet store on Thursday.
Well, they packed up because they just weren't selling any.
So maybe
But that was- It was worse during the lockdown, particularly when the schools weren't at school. But yeah, they just said it just wasn't worth coming.
Well, perhaps that's what we should suggest, and then they can do the other markets. They're setting themselves up to do Thrapston, Oundle and stuff
There
like
seems
that.
to be a lot of sweet shops in town, I think.
They're not that many. Well, there's Tesco.
But the sweet shop left, didn't it?
Mm.
The sweet shop actually left, so.
So general view, not huge fans, would that be fair enough?
I think it's the precedent.
And historically, we're
I don't want to be going against what we
Oh,
said.
sorry.
Well, I was going to go in sense, echo Dan's point, because I think it is a valid one. I would need persuading that something's changed to make us look again at something that for the last 30 years or more, to my knowledge, we've resisted. I'm not sure what the reason for that change would be.
Excellent. So let's move on. 2131.01 to receive the clerk's report. And there's anything particularly exciting that you need to
No, I had less meetings. I didn't have any real meetings this month. So it's just basically correspondence that we've received and the crime figures.
crime figures. We asked for these, and I suppose we should probably consider them. Is there police liaison? Is there anything particularly crime-based that needs to be aware of at the moment, or is it all pretty much as much?
Nothing's coming through. I'm not getting much from mine, I'm not in contact with them. It looks reasonable. I mean,
Cool.
I think they're the player that stands out from my previous life.
Excellent. That one not excellent. Good to move on. Thank you very much indeed. Planting a tree for the Jubilee, item 213102. to consider an email from the Lord Lieutenant regarding planting a tree, mark and celebrate the time of Jubilee. And then to consider whether the council will be holding an event during the bank holiday weekend. Is this 30 June?
That's the 6th of June.
Yeah, it's the bank holiday weekend, but it's changed. We're going to have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not the Monday.
Do we have any strong desire to do something Jubilee-ish?
Well, I did the last one. I'm not volunteering for the next one.
Sounds like it's the case.
It was a brilliant thing. I mean, I don't know if anybody attended the last one. Well, we had a team that did it, yes. Yeah, but, and it was a brilliant team, and it was an amazing day. And I think we should do something. And we could do exactly, we've got the notes for the last one, we could just do a similar thing, or do something slightly different, but we need to do something. Because it brought the town to it, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
But it also marked the opening of the pocket park, which
It did.
was rebuilt. So
Yeah.
that was quite such an important day as well. So there was all the significance, but it was a good day. It was one of those days where it was raining one day.
It was.
Bright sunshine,
Yeah.
it's all day long, rainbows and everything. And it took a lot of work, I will say that.
Yeah, the responses.
And I think, I know we're going to move on to about where the tree probably would go, but the tree would go, probably the park would be the right place to put it. And if we're going to rebuild, we're going to consider doing the skate park, and doing somewhere that can tie that in nicely. I know it's a little bit further off, but that's what planning's about, isn't it? We could use that as a bit like a big pocket park. We could
Yes.
use the skate park reinvention as a sort of beacon with wherever the tree's going to go, just an idea.
Val?
Flattened field.
If we own it then.
Let them feel, that's not entirely
They can't say the tree where it's got a Queen's tree.
54 mature road, bang in the middle of the
What an excellent idea. So Flattened Field, unless we don't own it. Yes, Jerry.
I was just going to make the point that we've had that sort of time of year, we also have the food festival, and
Yeah.
they have the vintage festival, and
Put it all,
if we're going to do something, we also be talking to OBA and the festival and make sure we're
put it
all.
all in the same place.
Just on that, yeah, there's also, I know some villages around being on Facebook saying is Anne's planning to do something, because they're looking to do something. So a bit of liaison will be a really good idea.
I think, to be honest, I think if we're going to do something, we need to start putting together some committee.
Probably need to have a little working party.
Val just put a hand up, she's volunteering.
Should we be putting the bunting up?
Yes.
I'm not the person to ask. So the general agreement is yes, we should be doing something. What we do maybe depends on what other people are doing a little bit, other villages and food festivals and so on and so forth. How do we normally liaise with all of these other groups?
Well, we just have their contact numbers.
Okay.
Yeah. But are you going to, I think you need probably a working party to,
Anyone keen to join the Jubilee Working Party? I'm a bit
I'll do
of
it.
a Grinch from the Paul?
It's the old team.
The old team back together. The old team back together. Is it the Blues Brothers or the A-Team? Film.
Yeah, okay. We did it worked the first time, so let's do it again.
And then the other issue here is, and presumably you'll come back to us and give us an idea about which day works best,
Yeah.
depending on what else is going on.
All right.
And then there's the issue of the green canopy. I had a quick look at this, and clearly there's a whole range of different trees available in numbers and sizes and scope and what we're planning to do. Presumably we support the idea of trees, lots of trees.
Yes.
Is this something we want to push towards the estates group to come up with trees in particular? Or, have we all had a chance to look at them? There's some big decisions. Do we want bee feeding, bird feeding, hedging, canopies, etc.? There's some big choices about trees.
Bees,
Lots of bees.
lots of bees,
Same with these.
fake bees.
I think that's an estates thing.
yeah, because it'll most probably be go on
There's
piece
also
by
a
now.
request that's coming, I think it's coming for estates next week, about a donation of 3 chestnut saplings. So maybe we could discuss trees all next week. Can we ask? Can you ask me?
Yeah.
But we're all keen on the trees and we're all keen on the Jubilee. Okay?
There are tree experts like Mr. Clay who in the town, it's like, I said, well, ask them what they suggest.
Yeah, absolutely. It also depends where we want to put it and what the target is. But yeah, absolutely.
The Blooming Arnold Transitional Group is updating the tree walk as well, so we can do a tree walk, which is now.
Tree walk.
Which is
It certainly seems from having a look at the website that there's an awful lot of different packs of trees available. And it seems that there's an awful lot of trees likely available as well. They're talking about in some of them covering the area the size of a football pitch. So I get the suggestion that we're not short of trees. If we wanted lots of trees.
short of football pitches.
We're very short.
I can find out from the other organisations what they're thinking of doing for the Jubilee. I do know of one thing, but I can't say at the moment. So, yes, it is.
Should we, is it too early to raise it in the rural forum in a couple of weeks? Or just at least flag it as a possibility of something?
Well, it makes sense, I suppose. We want to coordinate things throughout the neighbourhood, to actually see what other councils are interested in doing, whether that could be a joint exercise with this council, or whether we all do our own things, but perhaps in a somewhat coordinated fashion. So yes, I'll
I do.
put that on the agenda for the meeting next week.
Excellent. Okay, so we've got 213103 to approve the terms of reference for Finance and General Purposes Committee. So I call there does anyone have a problem with them being approved? Are we happy to have a proposer? Jerry proposed, I'll second. Are we happy to have those approved? Councillor Davis, are you happy with that? Yeah, that's right. Fantastic, excellent. 213104 to approve that Annandale Town Council confirms it meets the criteria of the general power of competence as set out in the Parish Council's general power of competence prescribed conditions order 2012. It's an exciting read. Certainly is. It struck me that we have to have the right number of councillors, which
We do.
and you have to have lots of qualifications,
We do.
which you do. You need to see them. We had them last week, so that's fine. Those are the two key criteria.
Yeah.
And we meet those. So do we need to approve and
Yeah,
second
you
that?
need to formally adopt it, and it will last until the next election.
David is happy to propose that. David is happy to second it. Are we all happy to approve we meet those criteria? Thank you very much indeed. 213105 to get an update from me. Following a meeting with the Annandale Ward North Northampton councillors. This was done on Teams a couple of weeks ago. Clearly we have the leader of North Northampton, Jason Smithers, is one of our councillors, and I've got David Brooke, who's known to us for a long time, and Helen Harrison, who's been mentioned so far. They are our ward councillors, and we're not sure, they weren't sure, and we weren't sure quite what they were actually going to be called. Ward councillors seems to be where they're set at the moment. It was just to say hello and congratulations, nothing else. I made some general points about a constructive relationship going forward, we hope, with North Northampton, and particularly building positive relations there, and how they would see that issue about, particularly Councillor Smithers being the leader of the council and representing us if there's any problems. The issue of Oundle and the hinterland feeling sort of out on the limb a little bit, and how we work together in various things moving forward. And then also how Oundle copes with its growth that seems to be coming our way for the next decade or so. The key message from them, I thought, was very positive. The key takeaways I wrote down here in an email to Emma. If we're feeling stonewalled by North Northampton officers, we've been asked to let our councillors know so they can apply some political heat, was the phrase. And they were very keen on us and North Northampton working together and the officers being part of that process to deliver what Oundle needs, which was refreshing, I think. Secondly, as we've heard already, there are portfolio holders who are sort of like cabinet members at the top. And the point they made was that there's a portfolio holder for rural affairs who can be someone that we can specifically go to and say, we as the north of the county, or whatever we're going to be called, it's not feeling listened to. And that seemed good news for the rural forum in particular. And all three said that we should use them as our first port of call for issues, not sit back and wait till they brew up, but to go straight to them and give them issues. And then we can work out how we want best to use them. We touched on this a little bit earlier about reporting back. They're happy to report regularly. It would be nice to see them in person at some point relatively soon, but until COVID is sorted out, maybe that might take a bit of time. But we're also aware that interminable reports coming in all the time don't seem to make anyone's life a necessary benefit. So I think they're very, very keen to work with us and very keen to serve the people of Oundle. And there's said that whenever North Northampton and Oundle clash, you always backhand, which is positive to hear. So it all sounded and felt very positive. Hopefully it will work, and maybe the rapid movement on Fletcherfield is a sign that that's the way forward. So yeah, I'm an optimist. It felt very optimistic towards the future.
On that note, I said earlier, but I think they should, none of them live in Oundle, and I think they should either give us an update as to what they're doing from North Northampton, either in written format for our meeting to actually have it, so we can talk it through if they're not here in person, or alternatively, over the year, one particularly makes it actually comes here biannually and presents an overview of what they're doing. I don't like the if we've got any issues, we go to them. I think they should be presented to us as our representative. I know you met with them, but I think they should be coming in.
No, I didn't mean to play that, but I think their point was that they would happily, they wanted us to express to them what we want.
Yeah.
And if that sounds a very fair meeting, but it's not them coming here to listen to us talk about it.
No, absolutely.
But the idea of twice a year, absolutely,
Yeah.
and then more regularly if needed seems important. That seems a very fair halfway house, and then a monthly report if needed. And also telling us what North Northampton is doing for animals.
Yeah, I was just going to say Helen Harrison was going to come to our annual town meeting.
I think she tried to come.
She actually tried to
couldn't
come,
get through on
couldn't
Zoom.
get on the Zoom.
Yeah.
So,
So no, absolutely, and I'm not sure why she wasn't included in, but I met up with them. But it sounded positive. So are we happy with that idea of them coming at least twice a year with a regular report? That seems fair.
I mean, we've got a classic case, because we've discussed it a little while about planning and some of the issues that we're facing. And to be honest, I mean, David is very good at making everything very clear for us. But as we're not making a decision on it, basically what we decide doesn't seem to get anywhere. And so to have somebody from Northants in the room to tell us, or to discuss with them face to face, because the town aren't really happy about a lot of these things. And for us to be able to express to a person here would be very, very good. It'll make, and then we can at least say, well, we've spoken to them, they've heard us. And I think that's one of the first things I would ask them to be involved with, because it seems to be going, and again, David can correct me, out of hand now. We've had 2 developments, now we've got a 3rd one. What else is going to be popping up? And how do we deal with those? Are we able to do it? Is it our business or is it Northampton?
I think again they're very aware of that, and I think Annabelle particularly is very aware of feeling in the local area.
Yeah.
It's how they deliver on that. But North Northampton is 75 councillors, I think, in total. So
yeah.
whether what their impact is through in that whole body is, I'm not sure. Rupert.
On planning, the difficulty is that by its very nature, planning is very different to all the other duties and competencies that North Northampton Council has. Different. In fact, I can illustrate this best clearly by saying that, well, first of all, at present, frankly, we're locked into a local plan which should but we're shoehorned into an officer's advice, at East Northants, to be very frank. There will be an examination in public, but that in parallel with this, there are these two dreadful applications, Comstock Road, Christmas Drive, which will be coming back to Northants, in fact coming to Northants Planning Committee on reserved matters, which offers a hope of tidying up the rough edges. But both these and this new one, that they, for the 53 dwellings around the cemetery, coming to the new Northants Planning Management Committee. The Planning Management Committees have to function exactly like a court of law. We welcome the right to written representations, and we have a right to contact our ward, North Northants councillor, if she happens to be on NNC Planning Management, which Annabelle Buchanan is. And all she can do is smile enigmatically and say, I hear what you say, but dear constituents, you must understand that until I'm at the meeting and discussion has begun, I cannot make up my mind. I've got to go in, not with an empty mind, but with an open mind. And like magistrates hearing cases, I've got to hear both sides and listen to advice before I decide to make a vote. That's what we're stuck with, we're shoehorned into. So by all means, let's maintain ongoing contact, both with Helen Harrison on policy matters, etc., and Annabelle, as and when we want to talk to her, and she will certainly listen on particular planning cases, but otherwise, we're simply shoehorned into a system, quasi-judicial.
Right, of course. I think Annabelle and Jason and I'm sure Alan understand their place, and I think getting them to come with feedback and meet would be a good idea, particularly when it's the reserved matters applications go forward. Anything else on that? No, lovely. 213106 to receive the land registry B1611 notification and consider responses for the land area around the Jesus Church, I think. Is it the area inside the wall or the wall area?
Actually, I remember that church regularly attend mass.
The way the plan works, it appears to be claiming ownership of land outside the wall that is currently public parking. My concern about it is that if this application of the land registry succeeds, will they seek to prevent public parking in that area around the church? Now, strictly speaking, this has come to us because we own the courthouse, which is more or less adjacent to this site. But actually, the people who are potentially most affected by it, it seems to me, the North Northants highways. Now, whether they've actually copied onto this or are even aware of it, I don't know. It seems to me we should make them aware. And if others share my degree of concern about this, we should make it clear to them that we're very unhappy about the application insofar as it appears to annex part of the parking spaces around the church. Absolutely no problem with the rest of it, but I do have a problem with it affecting parking there.
Just have a look at stuff like image on Google Maps, and I don't think it does. I think it's actually, the line actually follows the line of the wall, I think. So the parking is outside of that red line. It's on that little crest next to that bridge.
So again, it's worth looking at exactly where the highways start to be.
Well, so the Thunderbird line, which looks like covers that bench, that's at the edge, and then round
The little bit on the east,
the
on the east edge is the only bit I think that's outside the wall.
Yeah.
The satellite image.
the rest is within the wall or gate. That little bit, that nub at the end is where the little footpath is.
Yeah.
The speed and the road signs are there
There's
now.
a bit of guerrilla gardening going on there,
So it's particularly given our partnership with North Northants, is this best that we flag it up the highways and ask them for a view on it and
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, looking at that, it does look to me as if it doesn't end up parking area, but
It's a parking area really grown at the back.
But yes, if it includes that, the triangular bit of green on the end,
Yeah.
there is a waste bin on that,
Yeah,
which
and
would
a bin.
indicate to me
And a
that
bin.
the
Highways.
highways
Yeah.
own that piece of ground.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to.
And we actually,
maintain it.
we maintain that for
We do.
highways. We've got a contractor who knows that.
So they're trying to at least pinch that.
So we should, is this a Sarah Barnwell?
Well, yeah, and Sarah Barnwell, when the Blooming Oundle group were showing her where they were going to be putting some planting, they looked at that area there. So I can contact her.
So we have no grave concerns as a council, but we
But-
have concerns about the loss of highways.
Yeah.
So we're going to pass that to all properties.
Yeah.
Are we all, everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. 213107, to consider procedure for face-to-face meetings in the council chamber during social distancing.
Well, yeah, I think this was just following our sort of email.
Last time we met was in there above the valley, and it didn't seem very satisfactory for anyone. Meeting in here seems better, but I think Emma and Rebecca have squeezed us within an inch of Boris's rules and regulations about where we can sit. I raised the issue that I'm doing these things regularly, twice a week or more. And whether our health and safety consultant would let us use that for flow tests as a way of saying, before we come into a meeting, we can shrink things down a bit to meet more comfortably, and whether also being double vaccinated was something that they would want to consider. We managed to speak to them. or-
I haven't spoken to him about that, but I don't know, because of the guidelines that, as they haven't changed, I don't know whether we can shrink down in here.
I think it says we can move closer to 2 meters with mitigation, and I'm not sure whether everyone having a platform.
Yeah, or mitigation in the past has always met masks or screens.
That's fine. But I mean, are we happy with how we are at the moment? The advice I had from the guy at school is that, generally you can risk assess that provided everyone's in agreement. But if we're all happy as we are at the moment, that's fine. Everyone okay with that?
I thought this is great.
Excellent.
Far enough away from you, it's fine.
That's not right, he's just saying he needs it.
It's not great for the public, no.
I think it says because it's too close to me.
David, watch. It's only for another, hopefully.
Well, this is why if we can get the live streaming set up, but then that does, anybody that wouldn't be able to use that and would normally come. I mean, we only had one person that said they might come tonight, but then he didn't, because he didn't need to. It's the Fletton Field issue. So,
No, that's fine. I mean, this works well, and if people need to be involved, we can probably find a way of doing it.
I think-
it's only one more meeting.
yeah, I think if we would have an idea after publishing the agenda, if there was something on there that people wanted to come to, we would have an idea, and then we might have to think of something different.
I think it'd be tricky, wouldn't it, if we had 14 councillors?
That's, yeah. Mm.
Absolutely. I mean, it works as it stands at the moment.
Can
Cool.
I push us back?
213201 to approve the bank reconciliation balance sheet and budget for April, the monthly balance there that we use the trust bank. Any questions, queries or concerns on any of those?
No.
Are we happy to approve them? David, you're happy to propose them? Jerry seconded. Are we all happy to approve those statements? David, okay? Yeah, excellent. 2132, schedule of payments for May 2021, are presented, all paid up and related documentation checks are signed. Again, any queries or concerns on the list? No, I'm happy to approve that. Am I happy to approve?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to not approve it. I'm happy to propose it. Is anyone happy to second it? Paul is. Are we all happy to approve that as it stands? Lovely, thank you very much indeed. To approve the utility supply contract. This was raised at the Finance Committee last week. And I think the suggestion was that we fix the gas prices at 3 years
Yeah.
rather than 2, best price. But our electrical consultant expert, Councillor Hutton, was unsure about the present state of the market, so going for 2 years felt safer than going for 3 years at a time of high possible costs, which seemed a sensible option. Is anyone going to want to get into half-hour readings and other things? No, are we all happy to approve?
Yeah, question, just, we weren't clear at the last meeting whether we had the latest offers from all of the.
Yes, we
suppliers.
did.
So we did go back.
Yeah, and it was, well, actually, it was on the email that was forwarded to you. He, further down, he explained, partly the EDF, the EDF offer, they were no longer giving 3 year, and the other, they have, if we have an estimate of annual consumption, if we went above it, we would be charged 20% more. If we went below it, obviously we would get money back, but it was felt that that wasn't going to be a very good option. So that's why we didn't get anyone.
Okay, so we've got a recommendation for both the half annual and non-half for 2 years.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So again, I'm happy to propose that.
For 2 years, 2 years.
2 years for electricity,
Yeah.
3 years.
3 years for gas.
Because
That's the Defence Finance Committee.
So David, second, on the first. Everyone happy to approve that? Lovely, approved, absolutely. To receive the draft minutes, the Finance and General Purposes Committee held on the 8th of June. I'm not sure there's any issues apart from that which we've just spoken about. We just need to receive them, don't we? So that's
Yeah.
fine. And then to consider and approve 21/32/05, to consider and approve the cost for purchase of speed indicator device to pay for the license. Is the license that thing from hire, or is the license just sort of to hire a device?
No, the license is so we can put up a device that we purchased. And although on this licence there's only 3 places, 2 areas in West Street, 1 North Street, once you've got a licence, you can add as many other places to it as you want.
A very stupid question from perhaps a very stupid person. The licence had lots of numbers on about cost for 200-metre stretches and 50-metre stretches.
Well, I was told that all I needed to do was sign this piece of paper, once you'd approved it,
Yep.
and send a cheque or pay £321, and that would get us the
To
licence.
West Northampton.
Yes, yeah.
Seems very good. Okay. Right, so have we all enjoyed?
When we discussed in the past, there was one suggestion that we would have more than one site it could be at, so it would get moved around from time to time to try.
They're all mobile, yeah.
And that's the intention.
Yeah.
And the licence would let us be mobile.
At the moment, yeah, the licence has got 3 different places on it, but we can add more places once we've got a licence. I've had so many companies come to me with prices. I probably had about 8 or 9. For me, I think we're going to be paying within the region of about £3,000 for one. I've also tried to see whether I can get some funding, but I haven't had a response on that yet. I don't know if the funding's still available. Yeah.
And the other question I had was just about battery life, and presumably our maintenance guys will be swapping batteries.
Yes, yeah.
You get 2 batteries.
Yeah, I think possibly we need, I think if we've got those 3 places at the moment, we'd get 3 brackets that are fixed permanently, and then all you have to do is hook it on and padlock it to it.
Nice.
But I mean, unless you've got unless you have got a particular style that you like,
I got rather excited by this. More than I should have done, possibly. I remember reading in a number of places they say that numbers are bad because people get excited and try and get their numbers up, so they try and go faster. And smiley faces and grumpy faces and ticks and so on are better. That's more positive. And it seemed that some, but not all of them, had those. And the other thing that some seem to have more readily than others, including, I might have to brand it, I was mentioning.
Yeah.
Morlock, the last one down there, they seem to have data logging more readily than others, which might be interesting to see speeding patterns, particularly the transport
Yeah.
service.
I think there was a couple, I think they all do data logging,
But
yeah.
some of them had speeds and data logging. This one had smiley faces as an option, or you could program it, so you can say
Yeah.
handle smiley face. The last thing is they seem to be the ones that are used in Corby. I thought with our North Northlands partnership, is that a nice thing to pick up? Or-
Whatever you put up, it's about changing drivers' behaviour, and they will change drivers' behaviour, whether you've got a sad face, a smiley face, or a slow down otherwise.
You do see the breakfast come on 6:05 when you, like, they are the
Yeah.
most effective to.
They are. They're changing behaviour.
And can I vote for smiley?
Just on that basis, yeah, there was one that was much cheaper than all the rest.
What, cheaper smiley face?
No, it was a cheaper thing, but I'm not sure it had a smiley face. It claims to have warning triangles, brackets, anti-race effect. I wasn't sure if that was.
It had a few add-ons though, didn't it?
And
That
some of them
one,
solar powered, there was some, but they seemed much cheaper than all the rest, which made me.
it bothered me a bit, that did, because all the others are in the 2,800.
Yeah, not that I don't
I'm not
know
saying
a
that
lot,
it's wrong.
but I thought that they've got Corby like them if you look at their website, which I'm afraid they did. And it seemed to have a smiley face option, or we can program it, and it was data logging, and it was lovely and shiny.
Highlights.
But there we are.
Really nice.
Paul, do you have your hand up?
No, I think it's great.
Anyone, it seemed to me the most sensible thing was to say that we approve up to 3,000 plus that,
Yes.
and then let
Yeah.
you or a state come up with a reference.
John,
Well, is that fair and reasonable? Or
Also, we don't have a budget for this, I would just say. So if you do want to purchase one, you really need to decide that you're happy to take the money out of general reserves.
It strikes me that speeding is a big issue, and having some data, or maybe even just watching it one Sunday afternoon for the transport group might be something that's quite interesting as well. So it strikes me as a very sensible purchase that lots of people in the town would think is a good idea. So
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
happy.
happy to oppose it.
So what are we proposing? Up to 3,000 plus that?
Is that, and then the
Then
licence
the
on top?
licence on top.
Okay.
So happy to propose
I'm
3,000
proposing
plus
that.
that with a licence on top.
Secondly,
Secondly, are we all happy to approve it?
I'm going to approve it.
And that will come from general reserves.
I mean, the one that's Waitrose, it does slow people down. But it's fixed there. It comes up.
Right, item 21.33, I'm now going to put my last one down. So this is where I'm leaving the room due to my pecuniary interest, and I'm going to hand over to the Deputy Chair of the Planning Committee to talk about the planning.
Enjoy yourself.
I will, I shall see you soon. You need the gavel, David, it's just that. Oh, one last one.
I think we can probably safely start on the basis that the first item is simply to receive the minutes of the last planning meeting, which was held on the 1st of June. Pretty self-explanatory as ever, and there were quite a number of applications for us to consider. We seem to be getting slightly more detail in our comments. I think it's probably because we're so frustrated at times that it seems we say what we say and then nothing changes. But we're getting far more specific. Sometimes pays off, and sometimes doesn't. The other thing was that we seem to be looking at certain applications on multiple bases. On one occasion, because the drawings that were actually on the planning portal site were so misleading, it appeared, that we originally expressed concern about the application, and then that planning officer came back to us and said we thought we were missing the point. So we looked at it again. But unless there's anybody got any questions on that, I propose to move on.
what's the proposal?
Yeah, because we'll
Oh,
do that in
yeah,
planning,
okay.
because they're just being
Yes, of
received.
course, they're already being,
The next one's to receive the reply to the consultation response from Vistry Homes, which is in relation to the planning application at the Cotteslock Road, St Peter's Road site, which is led to the mayor withdrawing. I have to say the response was almost entirely predictable in my view. It was almost an identical response to the response that was given to platform, which was quite interesting because I wrote both the Oundle and the platform responses to the consultation. And they were different for obvious reasons. Yet somehow the response seemed to be well nigh the same, which perhaps suggested that it wouldn't have mattered what was in the response to consultation, that had just sent out the same response anyway. What would be actually quite interesting is to see what replies any other respondents to the consultation might have received, but I'm not specifically aware of that.
Except David, that platform have been invited to meet them.
Yes, that's true.
We have as well,
All right.
but I think, did I email you to get to confirm some dates? Yeah.
Right, we'll talk about that
Mhm.
at the end. So yeah, I mean, they're keen to meet us, but I suspect that again is simply so that they can tick the box to say, oh, and we've engaged with the town council, so parish council.
I just didn't know that they'd invited animals or something. I wouldn't know that difference.
Yeah. So I think it's just a question of watch this space. In due course, we will no doubt get the application for reserved matters, and at that stage, I rather suspect it will be a full council matter to design our response, which brings us on to a planning application, which has come before full council for two reasons: A, timing, but actually B,
You have got the extension now, actually. I spoke to Lisa
I
today.
mean, we automatically ask for extensions because the time was rarely fitting meetings when you only meet once a month. Certainly, historically, we've tended to be granted extensions without any real difficulty. So there is an opportunity in the event that tonight's meeting were to take that view, that the decision could go off to the planning committee and be decided by the planning committee rather than here. But I have to say that if it had been the other way round, as chair of the planning committee, I've been inviting the planning committee to say that it should come before full council because it's a significant planning application on a number of levels. And that's not just the number of houses, although 53 houses is not insignificant, but it's all the surrounding factors that go with it. Now, I sent out a briefing note prior to tonight's meeting, which I hope councillors might have an opportunity to read, and which I therefore don't propose to go through again unless anybody is desperate that I should do so. But part of the problem with this, from our point of view, is that we're almost in a damned if we do and damned if we don't scenario. On one level, you could say that the council were clearly in favour of residential development on the site because it was one of the sites that was included within the sites allocated under our own failed neighbourhood plan. So to say that the site is unsuitable might even tax the odd lawyer as to quite how you would justify such a change of position, albeit that there are some issues that clearly surround this site and this application. You could equally argue that we're now in a different ballgame. There have already been 2 grants of outline planning permission for a total of 260 dwellings in Oundle, on 2 big sites, St Peter's Road, Cottesloe Road and St Christopher's Drive. On the face of it, 260 dwellings would meet the requirements of the JCS. So of course it's a perfectly tenable position to say that we don't think that Oundle is in a position to significantly exceed the JCS requirement, which is a minimum requirement. It's not a maximum cap, but it is a minimum requirement. And you could argue, well, we shouldn't, in fact, approve this because we've already hit the numbers. Now, will have to decide as a matter of principle. It goes beyond tonight's decision. We've already talked about the local plan part 2, a plan that we considered as being fundamentally flawed, a plan that we said actually allocated sites wrongly, because in fact their assessments had gone off for examination. 2 out of the 3 sites recommended in it have actually already got outline planning permission. We could be in the bizarre scenario, very shortly, of having all 3 sites that are mentioned in the draft local plan with planning permission, either outline or full, before the inspectors even looked at it. We certainly commenced the public side of the examination, which might beg the question, in a sort of wider context, as to whether this council decides to take a different approach to the local plan part 2. Because if we do something that actually were to prevent the local plan part 2 from being adopted, there would be no local plan cover in this area. And the reality of that is that there wouldn't be anything on the face of it to stop developers coming forward and putting in further applications on other sites. And we're well aware of at least 2 other major sites where that's quite likely to happen. Now, if the local plan part 2 were in place with a number of allocated sites, NNC might be in a better position, were such applications to come forward, to say these are, in essence, surplus to requirements. We've already allocated the required sites for development, they've got permission, we don't need to grant any more. We've seen, very recently, on behalf of the proposer of the development of Benfield Road, the northern side, a very large site, is already making noises along the lines of, you're not going to deliver what you said you were going to deliver in other parts of the East Northants area. So we'll need to have development elsewhere that is deliverable, and therefore you should grant permission. And that might be another battle. Now that's not the application before us, but it's the context of the application before us that I thought was perhaps worth putting. In terms of the planning application itself, there are a number of constraints around the site. One of the obvious ones is that it slopes down to the brook, and the flooding issues from the brook, flooding issues which particularly seem to affect parts of Warren Bridge, rather more so than Clifton Drive, although I stand to be corrected by councillors with slightly more knowledge of Clifton Drive than myself. So you've got that whole flooding issue. I'm not a technical expert, and I looked through some of the material that's on the planning board. I say some of the material, there are 98 separate documents on there. It wasn't feasible to start looking at each and every one of them, but I looked at a number. And it's clear that there are various things that they propose, including sort of attenuation basins and one thing or another. And it's clear that some of the public respondents already have expressed the view that the measures are unlikely to work, that there will simply be continued overflow and problems. So there's the flooding issue. The other obvious issue about this site is the access. There is only one means of access. It comes out into Stoke Royal Road. They propose as part of this planning application to extend the 30-mile-an-hour limit further away from town so that it is beyond the entrance to the site. I'm sure we think is a minimum requirement. You've still got the practical problem of the bridge. As we all recognise, we're not talking about a straightforward, reasonably wide straight bridge. We're looking at a bridge on a bend that's pretty narrow. And councillors can't have failed to notice that the provision for parking on this site is for 171 vehicles. Now that is going to generate, even if let's say there were only 130, which is still over two a property. But the number of extra movements in and out, which you have to assume the majority will probably come out of there, turn left and go across Warren Bridge, either into town or through town. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on that bridge. As far as I could see, it looked as if they were proposing a traffic light system at the bridge. Again, I'm not a highways expert, but I wonder on timings if you wouldn't start to have issues with the traffic backing up in both directions, causing problems. But anyway, so you've got that as an issue as well. And I think in purely planning terms, they're perhaps the two major issues. In terms of the buildings proposed on that site, you've got 53 buildings, of which roughly 20% would be affordable. That perhaps is another matter for discussion and debating. And ranging in size from a couple of one-bedroom properties up to, I'm doing this now from memory, I think it's 9 5-bedroom properties. So there's a question of housing mix. There's a couple of bungalows. Almost all the properties are 2-storey.
Yeah.
There are a handful, which is a handful, at 2.5 stories. And in terms of what they look like, well, there seems to be a mishmash of some will be in one colour brick, some will be in a different colour brick, some again will be in a reconstituted stone. So those are some of the key factors. Two other things to bear in mind. That site is not in single ownership. When I refer to the site, I mean the whole area of the land that is behind the cemetery and abutting up to Warren Bridge. This proposed development site excludes a rectangular strip of land that is in different ownership. Though the developer proposes to put a road that will run up to that boundary, which would facilitate a later planning application to put more properties on the piece of land in the tree. You'd have to say it would look pretty strange if this land was developed in the way envisaged, if at some future point, and probably sooner rather than later, that one didn't come forward to. It would probably come forward to a level where it would be looked at as windfall type development. And I suspect it would probably that one of the issue. But there may be issues about whether it has an access through into Warren Bridge or not. The other thing is that the documentation submitted in support of the application refers to making an area of land available for a cemetery extension. This, as a number of councillors will recall, was a fundamental part of the neighbourhood plan. We wanted to get planning gain out of as many of the sites that we wanted to allocate as possible. The planning gain out of this site was the cemetery extension. And we had agreed in principle with the developer of the site that land would be made available. It's a reasonably generous amount, and they suggested to extend the cemetery by about 25%, which would keep us going for a number of years, although at that point, presumably, we'd have to start looking at alternatives. But not an issue, I think, for this version of the council, can we say. Clearly, therefore, there are going to be issues around the section 106, and that as being some sort of a fundamental. And there might be a whole raft of things we might want to think about in terms of conditions if we approve it, e.g. traffic measures. I think the developer is proposing just under £750,000 under section 106. On past form, this council seems to get very little say about section 106 agreements and what exactly they say. even though the development is impacting upon this town. Nevertheless, we should try to have some bearing on it. So those are the key issues, or at least as I see them, they are the key issues for others. They may think that there are other matters that I haven't particularly touched upon that are important. As councillors recognise, we aren't here to approve or withhold approval. We are a consultee. We indicate whether we object or whether we don't. Even if we do, it doesn't mean to say that it won't get planning permission. But if we do object, we will have to go through the full planning process. And who knows? I think the last point I'll make, I think I referred to it in the briefing note. One of the difficulties that we had in relation to the Cottage Spot Road, St Peter's Road site, was the fact that it was mentioned in the old and still currently extant Rural Northumberland Thrapston Plan as a possible site for development. And it was suggested by the local authority, and in essence upheld by the inspector, that because it said that it was identified as a possible future site, it wasn't really possible to exclude it. Seems to me that tortured the English language by some margin, but nevertheless it's what happened. And of course we're in exactly the same boat here, because this site is also mentioned. Interestingly enough, in our NOTP, looking at the entire site, including the rectangular strip that is currently excluded, they talked about it being suitable for, I think it was 230 homes. Now this is 53. I can guarantee you could not get another 150 odd houses on that rectangular strip. So the density that is being proposed on this site is very much less than was being postulated at the time of our NOTP. But I think again, it is likely to make it difficult in some ways to resist this site, because it is identified in our NOTP. It is part of a plan which has now gone forward to examination, and therefore is capable of being factored in by the planners into their consideration. But despite all of that, if we think that it's a rotten idea, we're perfectly entitled to it. Now, I've said a lot, probably too much. If anybody, however, wants anything else explaining, I'll do my best. Otherwise, I think it's probably a question of simply going around the room, but Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. It would certainly benefit going around the room, but since you called me, perhaps I could do the opening bowling on this. Just a few points I really need to make. Of course, the clerk already has on record the fact that I've registered a non-pecuniary interest. Since I have nothing to gain or lose, whichever way the application goes, other than perhaps a sense of defeat, in the event it went through without proper safeguards enforceable for flood and water control and proper safeguards. Coincidentally, I already have on full record, in the context of the toings and froings for setting the local plan, my Regulation 19 representations, in which I pointed out that traffic safety along the Stokesdale Road could only be achieved if an application of this size were to come and go ahead by a fairly drastic, so that it really got going. Namely, a viaduct that cut out the corner, which, as I pointed out, would simply not be cost effective in overall planning terms, but as a justification for the housing development. So, that Regulation 19 is on record and will be one factor in front of the inspector when eventually he appears to do his examination in public, whatever that may be. I suspect at this rate it looks like being late autumn. Right, meanwhile, therefore, what do? the chances of the inspector finding the local plan unsound, in spite of our severe reservations, are frankly something I wouldn't care to bet on at this stage. But perhaps Councillor Chapel might find it convenient to suggest that we obtain a learned planning council's advice on that score before we contemplated going head on against trying to get the inspector to declare the local plan unsound when he or she comes. And these days, a number of good lady inspectors too. These are independent, ladies and gentlemen. They're not Secretary of State's cat's paws. So that aside, turning to why I am against this anti-planning condition, unless proper enforceable safeguards and public control can be made, and unless significant traffic safety measures are brought about. At the very minimum, alternative traffic lights. I think we have good grounds indeed for opposing this application, and the Planning Management Committee known as the plucking of their courage, refusing the planning commission and standing the risk of the developer promptly appealing, the risk that if an inspector then, having heard both sides, decide not to the developer, that inspector would sting NNC for costs. So it's a fundamental dilemma, and I've said my piece, colleagues will be saying theirs.
Councillor
It's known I wrote in the email to everybody, so they've had an email from me myself in relation to this. Due to the fact that I'm now made aware we've got an extension, my preferred is that this is referred to planning where we can go, because I think between now and that planning meeting, there will be a number of more observations from residents in the local area, which already started to populate the data. And I think that will give us a better opportunity to know the strength of feeling around the application from the residents who are probably directly or indirectly affected by it, as opposed to us trying to make our way through all the different intricacies in relation to it. But from my perspective, I'm a resident of Clifton Drive. Mine specific is privacy. There was a photograph put on, I think Mr. Grubb sent the applicant in the photograph. Well, anybody wants to know, look at that photograph. I'll say this, that's my house, the one at the bottom. Well, the red line he's drawn is the height of the houses that are going to overlook probably about 6 or 7, if not 8 houses across this northern part of the site, of which mine is one of them. So that's from a privacy perspective for me personally, but I know it affects a number of other houses. The issue around gardens, I don't suffer from, I'll use mine as an example, I don't suffer from flooding. The flooding goes the other side. I've got photographs on how to show anybody of the recent floods we had. It floods the other side, and the other side of the brook, to me, they are considering building a big pond of some description, which will take off the surface water and other waters, and they're hoping that however the pump station is going to work, it will link in with the brook. So how that will work, because the pumping station they are looking to put in is outside near one of my neighbour's properties, other side of the brook. That will almost certainly will be filled, and they reckon that might not work. But they're the experts, not me, with that. I noted that the Environment Agency had not opposed the plan. They are linked to rivers, it's a brook, but unfortunately when Northampton floods, or is looking to flood, they open the locks up and down it comes the Nene, and then it comes our way through the brook and wherever. So I think there's a knock-on effect to do with that. So that's the flooding aspect that could cause us issues. Access, David's already said, is a big issue in and out of the site. That's a lane from Warren Bridge to Stoke Door. it's not like a normal adopted road. Anybody, you can stand in there, and it's not a straight bit of road. You get past where the site entrance is going to be, and the road then veers off to the left. So they've got to do a little bit more from a highways perspective to make that road safe or safer. The bridge, there's no indication they're going to put a footbridge over it, a footbridge of any way, shape or form to make it safe for the public. At the moment, if you want to walk along there, Rupert, I know he probably does it every day, he goes into the road and walks over the bridge. There is no footpath. So I think there's issues there they've got to address, there's got to be a footpath. Affordability of the houses, there are a number of people approaching already, knowing I live there, and they've known where the site's going to be, and said, oh, I really want a house now, but I want to live in town. And then they go, blimey, they've looked at the plan and they've gone, that's the furthest house. I'd have the furthest house away from the primary school other than what's in Wakefield Close. It's 1.8 miles from that site where they're putting the affordable houses to the primary school. And that's a big issue for some people. We talk about keeping vehicles off roads, and most of the people that probably might live in affordable, they may have 1 or 2 children, and they may be getting in their car to get their kids there for half to stay 8:45 in the morning. So I think there's some issues around that. Cemetery extension, I get. We need cemetery an extension, but are there other ways of extracting that land other than the way that this is being done? If we know we need the land, then we approach the landowner and see whether there's some work that we've done, because we know the landowner is a charity and they want to support Handle, so perhaps they can support Handle in a different way. That's my sort of opening gambit on that, but they're my thoughts around the planning approach at this time. But I prefer it to be remitted because there are a number of other people that are putting in their views to the planning portal, which I think the planning committee would be able to have sight of and give the full committee a more fuller view post that meeting, which I think is on the 6th of July, isn't it?
It would be something like that. I'll double check.
That was just.
Yes, other councillors may wish to express a view, because it would be possible, I suppose, for us to have that planning meeting as scheduled, but invite all councillors to attend it, to have a sort of part 2 to this, for the reasons that Councillor Davis has referred to. Councillor King.
I'm relaxed on whether where it sits, to be honest. I don't know whether it might be, I think you, Chair, sort of summed it up. I don't know whether we pragmatically acknowledge that it was a preferred site, but that actually the context of planning and development has changed within the term. And I would then put an objection in based on all the technical commentary that's already been summarised. I don't know whether we need, I'm sure that there will be lots of feedback from residents in the ensuing time period. I anticipate that, but I think if we feel as a council today that whilst we accept the fact of what we're all about, and it tactically might be a bit strange to sort of reverse our view in terms of the land, but actually there are a lot of things that don't technically stack up for me either, and I'm no planner, so it may be completely mitigated. I think I'd probably go for that tonight, but I'm relaxed otherwise.
Thank you.
I personally wouldn't object. I think it would seem a bit perverse to go back on, we spent an awful lot of time deliberating about what sites were the best fit for Amble, and that was one of the ones that we felt at the time was right. And he said that, like Councillor Key, I'm not a water drainage expert nor a traffic expert. If we weren't to object, I think we would need to make extremely strong representations that about the concerns that have been expressed, and seek very good reassurances and guarantees that effective mitigation measures were possible. I do also acknowledge that when it was part of our plan, we didn't have sites of the same size that we're now looking to get at Christmas Drive and at Stock Road. So. I guess there is some justification there for perhaps moving our position, but sitting here this evening, whilst I've got huge sympathy for the concerns, and I think demonstrably engineered out of being a problem, But if that can be done, then I wouldn't fundamentally object.
Councillor Thorne.
Can you come back to me in a sec, because I'm just looking up an old flood report for Warren Bridge.
In that case, Councillor Holland, it's come to you slightly quicker than you might have anticipated.
I am very disappointed that they're going to be able, that they put in at the moment not to meet the statutory requirements or whatever, I don't know what the right words are, for affordable housing, because I think that is a major issue in Oundle, and the only way that Oundle remains a viable and vibrant town is to make sure that younger people with families can stay here. So that is, I think that I haven't been party to how you came about to the sites that you had chosen, but it does strike me as slightly perverse to object to the site when it had previously been chosen. However, that the whole thing about the total number of houses in Oundle, this would be part of that, of course. But it perhaps that objection should wait for when you're looking at the actual applications coming in on the other sites where you already have a track record of objecting to the site itself. I cycle across the bridge very regularly. I hate it. Yeah, it's such a horrible bridge. But it's a beautiful bridge. It's a beautiful bridge. But for all road users, it seems extraordinarily dangerous, really. So I feel very strongly about some kind of traffic management. Very strongly about affordable housing. I don't know how, if you chose it as a site before, how is the flooding risk changed? So you liked it before, so
But
I'm
they
sure what
won't
we.
do 53 houses.
Um,
There will be a
It
lot
would have
less.
been somewhat less and somewhat further away from the door.
It wasn't the same.
But yes, thank you.
Yeah, so all kinds of things, but not, I don't object in principle to the development.
Councillor Thorne, you're now waving at me as if you're.
Well, there are
enthusiastic.
actually, I'll send you a link to all the flood, there've been a number of investigations of flooding at Warren Bridge. And it's nothing to do with the need, it's to do with the runoff. So your issue is surface. So one of our problems, we did a complete survey around it. And the two issues that came up, we know about the need, and that doesn't affect that affects South Road and where valves.
Yeah.
To say,
Very much so. And of course, the other bits that have got no where Waitrose is and stuff like that. But Warren Bridge is different. It comes from water we have a lot of problems with water off the fields and stuff like that. And there was a lot of rain. This is in 2016. But I'm going to send you this because it's quite interesting. So to be building 50 houses in a field, because at least the field could absorb the water, you're not going to have it with roads and stuff like that. That could attenuate the issue of flooding. So as the flood warden, my concern would be a large area built right next to Warren Bridge is not a good idea because you're taking a field and turning it into concrete.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the second thing is, I'm very happy with David's conclusion already. I mean, it's to do with the minimum numbers of houses. If we fit that limit, then, I'm happy to object on that alone. No, I mean, I've just been on the site and there's 10 comments already on there, all negative. So we don't need to wait really, because the comments are coming. We've had an email from somebody to all the councillors today. We know that the local feeling is very against this. As I said earlier, when we had the plan, the neighbourhood plan, it was for single-storey buildings in a lot less dense. It was just going to go down, and the idea was not to lose the view, which you've already mentioned. So it was in keeping with the area, and also in keeping with the local population? What's it, Mr. Gibson?
Well, it was actually 50 houses in our neighbourhood plan, and they were 2-storey. The bungalows, I think you're referring to, are the Millers.
Ah, that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's the good one, yeah.
yeah, they
So
were.
we
It was.
do have a link, not a link, well, we have an issue, but the issue is flooding. And I think that needs to be looked at. I also think the numbers, because we put, the thing is going to be remembered is the neighbourhood plan was a jigsaw, right? And so the jigsaw's been put away because they built 2 big jigsaws, and then they're trying to add the old jigsaw to the jigsaw, so you get one and a half jigsaws. And I think that's, my worry then is, what about the rest of the jigsaw pieces that we put together? Are they going to come back and say, well, you said that was okay, you said that was okay, you said that was okay, are we going to get planning on those? And how do we stop it? Because they're getting double for their money. So I'm happy to object mainly on the idea that we've hit the limit. And the flooding as well.
Has it
And
done?
that seems to bring it to now.
I have never liked that site over
No.
all the years because
Yeah.
the flooding has always been a concern for me. And as David says, you put even more built environment on top of it, of the fields. Where is the water going to go? There will be even less runoff availability. And it's always quite marshy around that area. It never really dries out anyway, does it? Does it? Richard?
No.
It's usually a bit soggy. Lots and lots of
Now,
the
since I'm
houses
slightly
in the
deaf,
bottom have had problems with their drainage over the years.
now, since you have mentioned my name, I'm afraid my hearing is not too good. When it's good, it's usually to be treated on Thursday. I won't elaborate on the medical aspects. Were you asking me to intervene slightly to confirm or deny a point?
I was saying that that area around the bridge is very often, over the years, has had problems with flooding in people's houses, in the gardens.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can emphatically confirm.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a serious flood in 1998, I think it was, shortly before my wife and I and the daughter relocated to our wall, which carried away part of Farmer Bearton's wall, Farming's field, and also almost cut away the structure next to the actual Warren Bridge.
Yeah.
Now, I think we can speak fairly frankly. Okay, the Environment Agency had no formal notice on smaller waterways. But on the other hand, what is now North Hampshire Council, a successor to County Council, they are flood control authority, and following coincidental representations like Bush earlier this year, the senior flood management officer, controller, Ruth Burnham, sent in consultants to enter the ground. So Ruth Burnham has her eye on this, and in my representations, which I sent in the other day on this planning application, I urge strongly that our planning officers make sure that Ruth Burnham, or one of her more senior staff, as well as highways engineers, come along to the planning management committee hearing and hearing application, so that committee members can frankly cross-question them.
Anything else? Right. There seems to be 2 possibilities. Either we do make a decision tonight or we defer it, as has been suggested by Councillor Davis. I'm entirely neutral about that. Quite happy for it to go into the next planning meeting, as we have the time. It may be that councillors feel there is only one of our number who's missing. If the mayor were to absent himself again, well, I'm not sure he would necessarily have to, from this debate. So at most, there would be 2 additional voices. And I think certain themes are coming through, although it seems some people are objecting to the application, others are veering towards not, but with emphasis on various concerns. So I think the first issue that I'm just going to ask for an indication on is who thinks we should make the decision tonight, who would prefer to defer it. The suggestion of deferral was Councillor Davies in the first instance, so let's take deferral first. Who's in favour of deferring this to the next planning meeting?
Can I ask, if you were to have that meeting, how likely would it be that the public would turn up to that? I'm surprised there's no one here today.
I'm actually a bit surprised.
Yeah.
I think under normal conditions, I would have expected there to have been a number of people present, probably mainly occupants of Warren Bridge and or Clifton Drive.
I have received quite a few emails. People were aware it was being discussed, and in those emails they have said that, you know, they want the council to object, but it may be that they just don't feel that they want to come.
I
Councillor Davies first.
I put the email in, and at one point there was a thought that actually I wasn't going to be able to be sitting here now to be able to talk about it. So I said on behalf, certainly on behalf of Clifton Drive, I was quite happy to express their view, the view generally for the development, for the road as such. There was a meeting last week, that's why I wasn't at one of the meetings, where there was about 17, 18 people. So I'm here sort of wearing two hats, in effect, on that point, but to express a view, and if it was remitted, obviously, but my view to the residents was, please make sure that between now and the 26th of June, you are putting your objections in, and please let the council know your views, because I may not be in a position to be able to say what I'm going to say on your part of the meeting, and I think that explains probably why they're not here. A number of them accepted that actually I could probably say a few things on their behalf.
Councillor Fuller next.
Well, I'm just going to make an addendum to what I was saying earlier, I hope you don't mind. I've just been trying to find it, and I have found it. And it's from a flood report, the last one, the one on 2016. The recommendations are to continue to consult with the Environment Agency, and they've done that, but also the lead local flood authority, the surface water drainage team. And I don't think they might have done that. I think it's something that we need to ask the question, have they actually been to that lot? Not just the Environment Agency, it's a different group. And that might actually help us as well, because I do feel the surface water drainage is the issue, that's the flooding, and I don't think this plan actually takes that into consideration. Sorry, that was important, I really don't mind, but I'm just trying to find it.
Councillor Icon, you was had your hand up. I'm trying to get back to the question I
I'll
raised.
take your part, I'll take your part.
Councillor Icon.
Well, thank you, Councillor Chapel. I'm for unequivocally deciding tonight to show in an objection, hanging our hat on the flooding control and traffic safety. We've nothing to lose.
Councillor Hutton.
My observation was that there's enough people around the table who are going to object, so it doesn't, I don't think putting it to planning is going to change that. My suggestion would be that we allow the planning committee to go away and draft the response of our objection based on all of the issues that have been raised. So in my view, as you know, the suggestion is only say but clean, that's where the vote's going to go. So I would suggest that's what we do.
Are councillors generally,
I was just thinking on that point, why don't you draft the response, put it on the planning committee meeting for it to be approved, and then if any other councillors who aren't on planning can go along, they can read it, and they can say whether they approve or not.
which is exactly what I was about to say. Yeah, I mean, if the councillors are happy with that approach, I as chair of planning have heard what people are saying, but there are a number of very clear themes that have emerged out of this. The level of concern, which I think probably is on balance that the council feels to reject. But if I draft something, have it on the agenda for the next planning meeting, all councillors will get a copy of it. Any councillor can attend that meeting, and if they want to argue that that should be changed in some way before it's submitted. Everybody happy with
You
that?
did propose it.
I'm proposing.
Right, proposed by councillor Fuller, seconded by councillor Davies. All those in favour of that approach?
I think it's a good solution.
I didn't seek to vote because it seems that perhaps the appropriate one will
Do you know what we're doing? It's anyway.
So can I ask then on procedural issue, if we attend that, but are not summoned, clearly we wouldn't be able to vote.
If you
I
would,
did want to actually object to the objection.
you'd have to be
I
there.
haven't had an opportunity to have that vote recorded,
No, you'd have to be at that meeting to object.
but I have to be summoned, wouldn't I?
Not to the not to the committee meeting. You're not summoned to committee meetings, only the full council meetings. Yeah, unless this council chooses to turn it. Well, you wouldn't turn it into an extraordinary meeting because it's a scheduled planning meeting. But because by default you should be on planning anyway. All councillors should be on planning as part of our standing orders. So you can just go and be a part of it and vote.
There you go. Without the planning, it's good fun, that. Never mind.
Well, I think
Not on this one.
I think we've finally got there, and on the basis that there must be a risk that the mayor's gone off to sleep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know how many cups of tea is that.
Back to the gavel. Always had to squeeze a eavesdropper. He's doing work. Catching up on them.
I've been reading.
But you managed to get through the meeting up really rapidly, so I'm not sorry that okay, we're there now.
Thank you very much indeed for doing it. Right, let's crack on then. There we go. So for estate management matters, to receive the minutes from the meeting on the 25th of May 2021. There's a particularly radical there. Paul, do you say anything about that? Or
No, there's nothing agreed with that. Councillor making the decision.
everyone happy to receive those?
Yep.
Let's receive an update from the Communication Working Party and consider any requests. That was an exciting update because it happened just before we started the first meeting. I mean, there's nothing dramatic to report. We talked about lots of different things. David's got another job to do, which is great. I'll write some notes up on that as well. But in general terms, we talked broadly about making the sound in here better. David's volunteered to do something about that as well. The website was praised, lots of other things that were pretty good. Anything else that we need to report on?
Hashtags for Instagram.
You're excited by hashtags. We'll come up with a correction for terms of reference that I'll put up for the next meeting as well. 2136, information about World Refill Day, which we are signed up member to in the council, but unfortunately can't really get into refill, but we're keen on it, we like it, it's going to be advertised in lots of places, and obviously it's a good thing going forward. Anyone want to add anything about refill day? I've got my bottle over there, which is a refill. 2137, any other relevant matters for report only? Let's just quickly go around. Paul, anything from you? Rupert, anything for report? Rupert, any report from you? Anything to report?
Sorry, my hearing's poor.
Sorry.
Strengthen your voice.
Anything for report? Any of the last item on the agenda?
Any relevant matters? No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was only just going to mention Farmers Market on Saturday looked a bit better. There was no big progress onto the we're all expecting massively sunshine.
Brilliant. Sunshine must help. Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for having that. Jerry, David, please.
Is the communication group working on co-opting? How are we going to?
We've been working on co-opting for a while. If you have any magic silver bullets, do please tell.
I'm not suggesting that, it's just that you didn't report anything when you said what the communication group was looking at. And it seems to me it's a big issue to have 4 people missing from the council.
I can go into more detail if you want. We talked about digital communication in particular, how we're going to work with Amber Life, and we could refer to that. I know we've got a big thing in the Chronicle at the moment about local government, which Tony and Peter and other people commented on last time. I know a lot of us trying to get people to be willing to stand in some way, shape or form for the council last time. And I don't think if anything magic happened. So if anyone has any brilliant ideas, I'd be more than happy to hear them.
Just go find somebody, just go wait till the person.
Yeah, I think there's certainly 2 or 3 people who I know are interested, but it's not perhaps the right time in their life at the moment for all sorts of reasons.
It's something that we've lived with for a long time, to be honest. In the previous council, we've been on this for a long time, to be honest. It was rare when they fall. So we are aware of the issues, but it's not unusual. I just thought I'd point that out. This is fairly normal.
Well, I was just going to say, maybe we should put on the agenda for the next meeting the issue of co-option on the one hand, and I would also say that we also need to be looking at whether or not 14 is the correct number of councillors. I know that over the years, the number of councillors has gone up and down, as we have struggled to find what was the right balance. One of the reasons it ended up at 14 was because we used to deliver the oracle by hand. And we wanted an appropriate number of people to go and deliver them around the town. And we came up with 14 as being the optimum number and wanted 14 councillors. And over the years, there have been periods when we've got as high as 14 councillors, but not often. And the problem is, I certainly hope it won't happen to any of our number around this table tonight, that you get an election, somebody comes on, and within 6 months, you suddenly notice they're not coming anymore. And they either just drift away or they formally tell you they're giving up. So it's not only getting people to stand, it's actually retention is another issue. So it's probably a matter for debate. We shouldn't be debating it now because it's really not on any other business matter. But actually, I think it's a fundamental principle. Do we actually want to look at co-opting more people on? And I know it's quite hard to actually alter the number of councillors.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that
timescales
easily.
for doing it, which perhaps the clerk could investigate, so that when we make a decision or look at this next time, we have that information available, because it isn't just a matter of us unilaterally saying, oh, right, well, in future we'll only have 10 of us, you've got to go for the whole category.
I'm just going to add to that. It works better somehow with, say, 10 or 11 committed people who do turn up for meetings, and having, as we have had, I think there was one councillor who attended once, I think, maybe twice, which is pointless because you have an expectation that that person's going to be there in terms of subcommittees and things, and of course they don't come.
Well, perhaps the communication group would have a programme of co-option, so they build in, I don't know, they start a programme of like, we're going to try and co-opt some people. They've evidenced that over a period of time. If we don't have any support to that, then we've got good evidence, we've gained that evidence for when we say we'd like our council to be 10. And then we can look back previously through the previous years and find out what's worked, you know,
What's the average council?
what's the average council, certainly.
12 or 10.
I think 10 is a bit low for this size of town.
So we might push, but we might try and do that. We have the evidence that will support, so that if public around and say, oh, well, you had 14, you should have 14. So
Well, we've got
actually,
evidence from the
we
past.
can show 12. That's how I
We have
feel.
evidence. I think, as David says, it's beyond this now, but we've had evidence, we can look at the previous ones, and that's the numbers, because it's normally older people.
Well, the plan to do that now, so we'll Twitter campaign. a Facebook
Can you
campaign,
circulate that
campaigns,
attendance sheet?
Show what we're doing.
Go to the bottom,
Then we have
that's
interest,
the
we get
town
12
council.
great. We can't use all
Yeah,
of it. 12,
just
12
realising
down,
that
but
would be
we can go and say, right, we've got that.
everybody could quickly sign
That's
it.
how
Yes, it's not a nice subject, it's overflowing bins. There is, I don't know about the rest of the town, but at the bottom of Bassett Fall Road, where people go onto the fields to walk, it is disgusting. It is surrounded by bags of stuff that people have left. And I do worry about vermin.
Is that something we report?
Is when you say bags of stuff, is it like dog poo? Or is it?
No, it's
Rabbit.
not a
Probably
dog food. It's
picnic baskets.
picnic type stuff.
okay.
There's a lot of river
Large
activities.
bags of it, yeah.
Okay, I'll get that.
So piling up.
Thank you very much. David? And then the only thing for me is that, just report about the transport group talked about, in particular the idea that we're going to hopefully contact Sarah Barnwell and Northampton and tell her we exist. And hopefully you'll be ready for Rural Forum in June, just to get the message out there and then hopefully focus in August and July and August in getting the message out and seeing what people want to talk about with an aim of heading towards
It's too late.
getting a report formalised in the next 6 months towards Christmas. So there we go. Thank you very much indeed for everything. 21:15. Can we make sure we all sign a bit of paper so that we're all pretending to be?
You are a star. Thank you so much.
Last point.